Welcome to Here Comes the Boom, a go-to recruiting podcast brought to you by KSR and KSR Plus. We've talked a lot of transfer portal these last few weeks, and now we're shifting over to high school recruiting. Now that this class is basically done, this 2025-26 roster is done. Before we talk about recruiting, be sure to go and subscribe to KSR Plus. We've got an interview with Denzel Aberdeen over there, Denzel Aberdeen's dad. We've got a bunch of great content. So go and check that out. But now let's talk about some high school recruiting, starting with the number one player in the class, Tyron Stokes, who has set an official visit to Kentucky May 15th through 17th. He has been the number one player in the class basically since rankings started in this 2026 class out of Sherman Oaks, California. There has been some reclass buzz with him, but that's been shot down by his mother. And right now, most schools anticipate that he'll be staying in that 2026 class. So what are the schools involved for Tyron Stokes if he does stay in the 2026 class? Well, he's already taken an official visit to Louisville back in the fall. He recently took an official visit to Kansas, and then now he's got this Kentucky official visit May 15th through 17th. A few other schools I've heard mentioned with him, USC and BYU. It wouldn't surprise me to see him set one or two more official visits, but I think that this is really the main group involved. Maybe Arkansas could get in the mix. We'll see what happens there. But right now, I'm expecting him to stay in the 2026 class, but you can never rule out a reclassification. So we'll see what happens there. So he's the one guy in the 2026 class that's already set an official visit, but Kentucky's been on the road recruiting, starting to visit with some 2026 prospects in their own towns. Starting with Anthony Thompson, five-star guard out of Ohio. Mark Pope and Cody Feger both visited with him on Tuesday. That he's a big priority in the class. He's already taken two visits to Kentucky. He was there for Big Blue Madness, and then he was there for the Florida game this past season. 6'8" guard, number 14 in the On3 industry ranking, but number 5 in On3's rankings. He's just climbing up those ranks. He's kind of been held back a little bit by that ESPN ranking at 26, but he's a top 10 player in the class, one of the best long-term prospects in the entire country. So that's a big one, and he's been a clear priority for Kentucky. Another player that they went in and checked in on is Tay Kinney. Pope, Hart, and Feger were all in to see him on Wednesday. He plays at Overtime Elite, but he's obviously a Newport, Kentucky native, someone that Kentucky fans should be very familiar with. He was at the Arkansas game this past season. He's visited Kentucky numerous times, 6-foot point guard, and he's one of the top point guards in the 2026 class. Talking about another guard, one of the top guards in the class, Caleb Holt. He also was visited by Pope, Hart, and Feger on Wednesday. I believe he's now ranked number 4 in the class, the number 1 shooting guard in the class, out of Grayson, Georgia. He's originally from Huntsville, Alabama. So he is an elite prospect in the class. You've got a big mix of players there in that top 5 range where he could probably climb up to being number 2 player in the class if he improves at a good rate this season. The last player that they've already checked in on is Austin Gooseby. That's one that's flying a little more under the radar, a 4-star out of Melissa, Texas. That's one that Alvin Brooks has been taking the lead with. Brooks has been in to see him numerous times over this past year. He does not have a Kentucky offer yet, but his father told me that he expects Pope to come in and see him at some point this summer. He'll be on the Nike EYBL circuit, so I'm sure the coaches will be watching him there. So that's everyone that Kentucky has already visited, but they're not done yet. They're set to visit a new batch of players next week, starting with Mika Minan, one of the top 10 player in the class by some rankings, top 15 by other. Out of Compass Prep in Arizona, 6'10" power forward. Kentucky is expected to be in on Monday to see him. There's been some reclass buzz with him. He's been a player basically since last summer who's been talked about as a potential reclass. So we'll have to see if that transpires. I know he's taken visits to Arkansas, Utah, and then he just took a visit to Texas Tech. So we'll see where things go from here. Another player that Kentucky plans to see on Monday is Ikenna Alozie, another point guard. And he is a top 10 player in the class as well, number 10 in the On3 industry rankings at a Dream City Christian in Arizona. He received an offer last summer, fall around that time, and his recruitment has been pretty quiet. I think he's taken one official visit to Washington so far, so he may be taking some more official visits this summer and fall. Two more guys out on the West Coast. First, Christian Collins, who is number 3 in the On3 industry ranking behind Tyron Stokes and his high school teammate, Brandon McCoy over at St. John Bosco. Collins has not announced an offer from Kentucky, but the staff has been in regular contact with him, so they'll be in on Tuesday to check in with him. And then the last player, Taj Ariza, the number 8 player in the On3 industry ranking, a 6'8" forward, the son of former NBA champion Trevor Ariza. Taj told me that he expects Kentucky to be in sometime next week, but he doesn't know an actual date yet. So he's the last guy that we've confirmed Kentucky will be checking in on in this 2026 class, but it wouldn't surprise me if more names popped up throughout the day. But yes, this is a pretty good 2026 class. The 2025 class was so loaded that any class is kind of a downgrade by comparison, but 2026 is a sneaky good class with a lot of prospects that Kentucky is going after, and it's clear that they're really making 2026 an emphasis now that their roster for this next season is done. Final thought, we got to talk about our sponsor, FanStake. Nate Ament has committed to Tennessee. That was one that Kentucky sort of faded down the stretch, but there's a lot of good players out there. Be sure to go to FanStake and go find your favorite player in this 2026 class. Maybe he's even still a transfer prospect. Just who is your favorite player? Go in there, put in a stake, and we'll check back and see who's high on that list and who the Kentucky fans want to be in that Kentucky blue. Thank you for joining me today. Be sure to go and subscribe to KSR Plus, subscribe to the KSR YouTube channel. We're going to have tons of great content on who Kentucky's visiting in the 2026 class. Probably by the time we put this video out, there will be a few more names out there. So be sure to go and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon.